Ladies and gentlemen, let us all sing our national anthem with pride. And please remain standing for the lighting of the oil lamp.
It is the Sri Lankan tradition to light the oil lamp before an important event. For this auspicious moment, I would like to cordially invite Deputy Vice-Chancellor of University of Peradeniya, Professor Parakramakaruna,
the Chief Guest, Dr. Michael van der Putin,
the Guest of Honor, Professor Channa Ratnatunga,
the Congress Lecturer, Professor Anuja Premawardana,
the Dean, Faculty of Medicine, Professor Asiri Abegunawardana,
President of PeMSAA, Professor Ranjit Kumar Sirivitana,
Congress Chairman, Dr. Sisira Ranaraja,
representing the past President, Dr. Maitri Rajapaksa,
representing PeMSAA Australasia, Dr. Sisira Jayatissa,
the Secretary of PeMSAA, Dr. Manoji Patirage,
and Congress Secretary, Dr. Rajita Abesekara.
Before we begin our proceedings, we would like to remember an eminent person who has passed, Professor T. Varugunam, who was the pioneer of PeMSAA. We will now observe a minute's silence to respect him. Thank you. We now invite the Deputy Vice-Chancellor of the University of Peradeniya, Professor Parakram Karunaratne,
the Chief Guest, Dr. George Michael van der Putten,
the Congress Lecturer, Professor Anuja Premawardana,
the Guest of Honor, Professor Channa Ratnatunga,
the Dean, Faculty of Medicine, Professor Arterial Begunawardana,
President of PeMSAA, Professor Ranjit Kumar Sirivitana,
the Congress Chairman, Dr. Sisira Ranaraja,
and Congress Secretary, Dr. Rajita Abesekara, to take their places at the head table. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated.
I cordially invite the Congress Chairman, Dr. Sisira Ranaraja, to welcome the gathering.
Good evening, all of you. The Deputy Vice-Chancellor of University of Peradeniya, Professor Parakram Karunaratne, the Dean, Faculty of Medicine, Professor Asri Abegunawardana, President of PeMSAA, Professor PVR Kumarsiri, the Chief Guest, Dr. George Michael van der Putten, the Guest of Honor, Dr. Channa Ratnatunga, and Congress Lecturer, Professor Anuja Premawardana, and distinguished invitees, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a great pleasure to see you all here today at the inauguration ceremony of the 14th International Medical Congress organized by the Peradeniya Medical School Alumni Association. I am privileged to welcome you all for this important event on behalf of the PeMSAA and the organizing committee of the Congress. I extend a special welcome to our Chief Guest, Dr. George Michael van der Putten. Thank you for accepting our invitation to share this evening with us. Being a renowned lepidopterist, you will add color and glamour to the proceedings this evening. Mrs. van der Putten, we welcome you to our midst and thank you for your gracious presence. I am delighted to welcome our guest of honor, Dr. Channa Ratnatunga. Sir, it is a great pleasure to see you in the faculty, in the familiar surroundings of this physiology lecture hall, bringing back many nostalgic memories of our student days. I warmly welcome the Deputy Vice-Chancellor of the University of Peradeniya, Professor Parasitoids. Thank you for your support to PeMSAA. And I am pleased to welcome the newly appointed Dean of Faculty of Medicine, Professor Arterial. We greatly appreciate your distinguished presence. I am honored to welcome the Congress lecturer, Professor Anuj Premawardana, who is a brilliant alumnus of the Peradeniya Medical School. Thank you for accepting our invitation to deliver the prestigious Congress lecture at this 14th International Medical Congress. A warm welcome is extended to the distinguished invitees, guests, and resource persons. We greatly appreciate your presence here this evening. As always, it is great pleasure to welcome our alumni, many of whom have come all the way, not only from all parts of Sri Lanka, but also from the world, the UK, USA, Australia, New Zealand, and other countries. We welcome you warmly to our midst. Thank you for your staunch support to PeMSAA. And also welcome our past presidents of PeMSAA and Congress who enrolled to bring the PeMSAA to this position today. All the pre-Congress workshops have been conducted very successfully. I would like to take this opportunity to thank as well as welcome those who conducted and participated in those valuable workshops. I extend my heartfelt appreciation to the President of the PeMSAA, Professor P.V.R. Kumarasiri, and his committee, and all others who work hard to make this event a success. A special thanks should go to our two secretaries, Dr. Manoji Patirage and Dr. Rajita Abesekara, the secretaries of the PeMSAA and the Congress, who worked tirelessly to make this event a reality. We hope all of you will join us again tomorrow at the Congress at the Plant Genetics Center, Gannoru, to achieve the theme. Our theme is commitment to healthcare with compassion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, we look forward for the presence of Professor Ranjit Kumarasiruvitana, President of PeMSAA, to deliver the presidential address.
Chief Guest, Dr. Michael van der Putten, Guest of Honor, Professor Channa Ratnatunga, Deputy Vice-Chancellor of the University of Peradeniya, Professor Parasitoids, Dean Faculty of Medicine, Professor Arterial, Deans of all the faculties, Directors of General Hospital Kandy, Teaching Hospital Peradeniya, Sirimava Bandaranaike Children's Hospital and Dental Hospital, academic staff of the Faculty of Medicine, members of the Council, students, ladies and gentlemen. Faculty of Medicine, University of Peradeniya is one of the pioneering medical schools in Sri Lanka, responsible for producing knowledgeable, skilled medical, Faculty of Medicine, University of Peradeniya is one of the pioneering medical schools in Sri Lanka, responsible for producing knowledgeable, skilled medical professionals to the nation for the last 5 decades since 1962. Medical professionals who have graduated from this faculty have tremendously contributed to uplift the healthcare services of Sri Lanka. Furthermore, their expertise have been shared effectively by many developed and underdeveloped countries of the world. While the Faculty of Medicine, University of Peradeniya, celebrating her 56th birthday this year, PeMSAA has reached 26 years from its inception in 1992. The chosen theme of this conference is Commitment to Healthcare with Compassion. This theme was selected considering the commitment of healthcare providers in Sri Lanka. In many forums, it has been discussed widely that the doctor-patient relationship has been gradually deteriorating over the last few decades for various reasons. Under this theme, we were able to conduct many educational as well as welfare activities, which I am confident will continue in the future too. Educational activities for undergraduates and medical professionals. A series of educational videos has been uploaded to the PeMSAA website for the benefit of membership. The chosen topics were professionalism, patient-centered case management, medical ethics, recent updates on communicable and non-communicable disease management. PeMSAA donated 40 Scrabble boards to the English language teaching unit to facilitate the English language education program of the medical undergraduates in the faculty. PeMSAA took an initiative to promote research activities of medical students by sponsoring the Faculty Student Research Day program, which was organized by the Student Affairs Committee of the faculty. This was organized with an objective of inculcating positive research culture among students by improving their knowledge, attitudes, and skills to research and to uplift the standards of research among new generation of medical undergraduates of the faculty. To educate the general public on healthy lifestyles and common medical problems, a series of educational videos were produced with the help of the Rupawahini Corporation of Sri Lanka. These 32 educational videos were telecasted under Ayubo Veva Rupawahini program on every other Saturday at 6 p.m. during the year 2017. To update the membership on the current activities of PeMSAA, a newsletter was launched and currently it is circulated among the membership on a regular basis. PeMSAA strongly believes that the students should have adequate facilities to engage in extracurricular activities, especially the outdoor sports. We were able to donate cricket equipment worth of 160,000 rupees to fulfill our objective and the requirements of students. Student scholarships. In 2017, PeMSAA received $11,000 for the student scholarship program from PeMSAA Alumni of USA. This money was handed over to the faculty for the student scholarships program. Currently, more than 10 needy students get benefit from that. In 2018, Alumni of Sri Lanka initiated a new PeMSAA bursary program to support the needy students. Several students are currently benefited from this program too. Welfare activities. PeMSAA renovated the faculty canteen and purchased a sofa set for the benefit of students. Donation of 110,000 rupees worth curtains to the faculty canteen by an alumnus definitely changed its appearance. To improve the security of students' belongings, locks worth of 25,000 were installed to the students' lockers. PeMSAA members of Sri Lanka actively participated to medical congresses organized by PeMSAA Australasia in Adelaide and PeMSAA UK in Belford during the year 2018. PeMSAA has embarked on a strong footing on support the construction of the proposed faculty hub, which is expected to provide all basic welfare facilities needed for students as well as staff of the faculty. So finally, I take this opportunity to extend my sincere gratitude to the council members of the organizing committee and well-wishers for their invaluable commitment for the PeMSAA 2018 Congress, and I look forward for fruitful scientific Congress. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next distinguished to honor us with his presence is Professor Arterial Abegunawardana, Dean, Faculty of Medicine. Sir, this invitation is for you.
Honorable Deputy Vice-Chancellor, Professor Parakrama Karunaratne, Professor Ranjit Kumar Sirivitana, President, Peradeniya Medical School Alumni Association. Our chief guest today, Dr. George Michael van der Putten. Our guest of honor, Professor Channaratna Tunga, Congress Chairman, Dr. Sisira Ranraja. Our Congress lecturer today, Professor Anuja Premawardana. Past presidents, council members, distinguished invitees, ladies and gentlemen. I feel tremendously honored and greatly privileged to be here in my capacity as the Dean of the Faculty of Medicine for the 14th Scientific Congress, International Congress of our Alumni Association. At the very outset, I like to congratulate every single one of you who was involved in organizing this magnificent event, which showcases our solidarity and our commitment to dissemination of knowledge. Our faculty has a very proud history of producing cutting-edge medical professionals spanning over 50 years up to date. The achievements of our alumni, both in and out of Sri Lanka, provides an ample testimony for the quality of graduates we have been producing. Many of the achievements of our alumni in distant lands are the ultimate jewel in the crown of our faculty. As the Dean of the Faculty of Medicine, I am confident to say that we continue to impart the knowledge and skill required for the 21st century. I have no doubt that the members of PeMSAA Sri Lanka and the other alumni scattered all over the world would continue to support the alma mater in every possible way in its quest to achieve even greater heights. That would be the most fitting gesture of goodwill towards the mother institution that nurtured and developed its progeny. I would like to conclude by thanking all of you once again for inviting me, and I have the great pleasure of wishing the Congress every success in the coming 2 days. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you for your insights, sir. Now, my privilege to invite Deputy Vice-Chancellor of the University of Peradeniya, Professor Parakrama Karunaratne, address the audience.
Good evening, everybody. Dr. George Michael van der Putten, the chief guest, and Dr. Channaratna Tunga, guest of honor, and Professor Asiri Abegunardana, Dean, Faculty of Medicine, Professor Kumarasiri, President, PeMSAA, and Dr. Sisira Ranraja, Congress Chairperson, Dr. Rajita Abesekar, Congress Secretary, Professor Anuja Premawardana, Congress Lecturer, distinguished guests, special invitees, academic, non-academic staff of University of Peradeniya, dear students, ladies and gentlemen. I should first tell you that the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Peradeniya, Professor Upulbi Disanayaka, wanted to actually come to this event, but unfortunately, he had to attend to some other urgent matter. However, he wanted to pass all the best wishes to this Congress. We are very thankful to PeMSAA as a university. We are very grateful because you all heard the list of activities they are doing from Professor Kumarasiri. We know that since its establishment in 1992, they have been actively engaged in developing the faculty and it's helping its activities. So we are very thankful to PeMSAA.
And this kind of international congress, they organize regularly, once in 2 years, I guess now. And it is very, very important thing because we need to update our knowledge as academics and as people who are engaged in the medical profession. Now, the science is moving very fast. Sometimes it is very difficult to cope up with the rate it is moving. And also, so many techniques are being developed for the betterment of the human welfare. Techniques now available, countless techniques. Now, I can remember when I was doing my PhD at London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, we didn't even have, at that time, there was no PCR machines. But the technique was there, so people used to have several water baths, one at 94 degrees for denaturing and primer binding 55 degrees and primer extension 72 degrees likewise. And the DNA sequencing were done at a very rough manner by running a gel, vertical, large agarose gels, and get the X-ray film, get into X-ray film, the banding pattern, and reading through light boxes, band by band, and that is how the sequencing was done at that time. And then nearly after 10 years, I went to Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine as a senior research, Wellcome Trust research fellow. And then all the genomic techniques were there. And we were doing cDNA libraries and automated sequencing, and then microarray analysis. And likewise, the techniques are coming up very soon. And the latest, the most important techniques, 2015, they developed a method to CRISPR-Cas9 system to edit genes or DNAs while the DNA is within the organism. You can edit the DNA. So I think that we are experiencing the fourth industrial revolution. First industrial revolution we had with the invention of steam engines in 1780s. And then after about 100 years, 1870s, electricity and fuel power replaced steam engines, and that was a revolution at that time, electricity. And then during the last century, 1960s, came the electronics with computers, and it was another, it is considered as the third industrial revolution, and we are experiencing the fourth industrial revolution now. We have so many new things coming from biotechnology, nanotechnology, artificial intelligence. So as you know, artificial intelligence is developing so fast, and it is replacing the doctors from surgery sometimes, and robotic surgeons are there. They are developing, and also the personal assistants, robots. And in the years to come, you may not sure whether the person sitting next to you is a robot or an actual person. So the technology is developing that fast. And nanotechnology, they are developing material unimaginable. So they have developed a string with carbon monolayer nanotubes, and that is more than 100 times thinner than human hair, but it can lift an elephant. It can lift the weight of an elephant. Also, they have now produced the clothes which can bend the light rays so that if you wear it, the person cannot see you. So simply you disappear. So the Harry Potter's disappearing cloak is going to be a reality. So in biotechnology, they are trying to clone the genes which are related to human milk production into cow. So from the cow, you can get human milk, right? So though so many things are happening in this field, 3D printing has come and stem cell technology. So things are moving very fast. And another very interesting field is that anti-aging drugs. So they have now developed drugs with NAD+. So NAD+ actively engage in energy transfer systems, so that they have shown that they can revitalize the immune system and the energy transfer mechanism in the human body. So the things are developing so fast, so that we also need to somehow stay in the field and catch up, hear about these techniques. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to survive. And that's why organizing these sort of congresses is very, very important, because the exposure to these congress or conferences will give us a fair amount of advanced knowledge on these in the field of medical sciences. So it is very important organizing these things. So we are again thankful to PeMSAA for taking up this very important task. And also, I would like to congratulate all the presenters who are going to present their work, research findings at this international congress. And I hope that this congress is going to be a very, very fruitful one. Thank you very much.
Thank you for a wonderful speech, sir. I would like to now cordially invite the Congress Chairman, Dr. Sisira Ranaraja, to introduce our guest of honor, Professor Channa Ratnatunga, and present the token of appreciation.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am indeed honored and privileged to be invited to introduce our guest of honor this evening, the multifaceted Dr. Channa Ratnatunga, a renowned researcher, a humane doctor, and a dedicated teacher. Dr. Ratnatunga is an alumnus of the first batch of students of the Peradeniya Medical School, and is one of the famous 5 of doctors from that batch who remained to serve Sri Lanka. Having passed out from Peradeniya with honors, he pursued a career in surgery within the Hallett Prize, awarded by the Royal College of Surgeons of England for outstanding performance at the primary FRCS examination. Having served several years in the Ministry of Health as a surgeon, Dr. Ratnatunga joined the academic staff of the Faculty of Medicine, Peradeniya. He retired as the chair professor of surgery after long service to the faculty and the teaching hospital, Peradeniya, where he established the vascular surgical unit serving patients from all parts of the country. His research interests were mainly into vascular disease and diseases of thyroid, and he has delivered several orations and published widely. In recognition of his pioneering work in vascular disease in Sri Lanka, he was invited to deliver the prestigious Congress lecture at the first International Medical Congress organized by the PeMSAA. In 1995, he was selected to deliver the Poet Moynihan lecture by the Royal College of Surgeons of England, the title being Insights into Chronic Arterial Diseases in Sri Lanka. He is famous for his dedication to the sick, and his kind and caring ways has earned him the love and respect from patients throughout the country. In the medical circles, he is well known for his love of teaching and is a much sought after and well-loved teacher of both undergraduate and postgraduate students. It is very difficult to highlight his long CV in this occasion. This is a summary of the highlights. Right? Even though he is retired and recovered miraculously from a serious illness, he still continues to teach students in the famous Monday word classes, something that he loves and enjoys and looks forward to. We are privileged to have you with us this evening. I respectfully invite you to address the gathering. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Channa Ratnatunga.
Sorry, otherwise. Members of the head table, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Dr. Sisaranaja, for that kind introduction. I feel privileged to be here, invited on this august occasion to be your chief guest. Meeting since the beginning of the PeMSAA 1992, you have had regular meetings over 26 years, every 2 years. This is the 14th together, and that shows to me, speaks volumes for the fact that alumni like to meet each other after they leave. And you wonder why. I often think, why do alumni like to meet each other? Well, look at it this way. At least in my case also, it was the nicest part of my life. You made friends, you lived together, you were young, you were actually able to make friends without hidden agendas, pure thoughts, and I think those things makes you friendship that will last a lifetime. So I'm sure many of you on this occasion will have an occasion to rehash your friendship, and I hope it will be all successful. Now, as you can see, the alumni, really the whole association revolves around, in my opinion, the pivotal force is the faculty. And I would like to say something for the sake of the faculty in the years to come. Now, at the faculty as such, there are staff members now, and I see them proliferating, and the growth is exponential. Buildings are satisfactory, infrastructure has come up, and something else also coming up. And I think this is an occasion for us to look forward and see what we would like to be 50 years from now, and what changes should take place in the faculty, in what direction, with what purpose. Just like the Millennium Goals or the so-called Sustained Developmental Goals, we should have our own goals. I don't profess to know those goals myself, but the faculty academia can actually sit down and have a workshop, maybe even in this particular Congress, to try to work out what you need to be, say, 50 years from now. If you take it on the short term, at least 10 years from now. So with that in mind, I thought with some hesitation and trepidation, because I have been in the faculty for 10 years, to make some suggestions on this occasion. So don't mind me talking of specifics. Now, first of all, we must make our students comfortable. Our students in the final year, actually in the boys' halls, have 3 or 4 to a room. We had only 2. I remember even with 2, if the other guy's friends come into the hall after dinner, they have a contract, especially the arts faculty, and that's the end of your story. And it will go on late in the night. You can imagine with 4 students what will that be. So I suggest that we use this occasion to consider at some point to develop a hall, residence for final year students. It should be also with all the facilities like laundrettes, because these are things that these fellows have to do when they have to study. Discussion rooms, computing with a fast band. I think that should be, we should take our first steps now, and perhaps in another 10 years with the Alumni Association in America, Australia, England helping out, we may, if we have the plan, we may be able to execute it. So I suggest to the President of the PeMSAA that we actually look into this. If we don't take our steps now, it will never get done. Point 2. I don't know, I recently went and gave a lecture in one of those halls up on those lecture halls. It was hot, and I was going to be there only for 1 hour. Imagine students at 1 o'clock in the afternoon having to spend 4 hours or 3 hours in that hot heat. The blowers are not working. I think they should be air conditioned. I discussed this with Kapila the other day, and Kapila told me that he had mooted this idea, but he was shot down by the council. And I hope the council will modernize, because now even a radio is available in a car. It's not a added additional thing. It's normal. Air conditioning is normal. What if you can't? Well, maybe the council thought of that it might affect the funds of the university. That is possible. But then again, you can put solar. The government is subsidizing panels. Why can't we step in and organize that and start getting air conditioning all our theatres? Then I would like to take another step. That is the library. They let the computer literacy of our students. I had a chat with Professor Langusekhar's son, and he told me this morning that there is a lot of computing facility due to come. We don't know what percentage of the students who enter the medical school now have no computer devices. He tells me that most of them are computer literate. They have their smartphones and they are computer literate. But he thinks that about only 10 to 15% have tablets or perhaps laptops. So I think people in the scholarship committee and all should think, before you give books, think of tablets, because that is a must. Actually, no, it's not a laughing matter. It is a fact that all over the world, tablets are being used by medical students, and if they don't have any from the rural schools, you need to actually supply them or make an opportunity to subsidize them. I went into the library, and Sriani, our librarian, got me to some information that I think I would share with you. The library vote is about 450,000. Actually, if you take a journal like the BMJ and you subscribe for 1 year, you pay half the library vote. Okay, and if you go online, it's about the same. So what has happened for the last few years, there have been no input of necessary journals. Even Medicine International, the Oxford one, and Surgery International, I think the committee has decided not to, it's been there for years and years, but the library committee has decided not to have it in next year. So we are not getting any journals, we are only getting books, and the books, the students even hardly come because they are on their tablet. So we must actually make that jump from the concept of learning from books, learning from information that is available all over the world on the net. Now, if you look at that, there comes another thing that comes to mind. Now, if you want a low-cost access, of course, most people get it from a pirated source, but if you want to get low-cost access, she spoke to the Colombo faculty librarian, and the alumni have provided a clinical update program. It's available on the web. If you subscribe, it's about $500 a year, no, $600 for 3 years. You can get access to updates on every aspect of medicine. So if that is available in the library, the academics at least can go and sort it out now. So these are actually very important steps to take as we go from books to electronic media, computer. Now, again, most of us have felt the cutting edge of advance in medicine. It's going so fast for us to get this knowledge, the skills, and the technology through is by itself will take our time. But I think we should pause and see what we can do to develop our own. Now, as you know, research, now I know there are groups who are working on research. Now, the UKD, the chronic kidney disorder things, there are groups who work and seem to be getting somewhere. There are people who are working on reptilian poisons and developing our own antivenoms. But there are so many other small things. But I think we should become a hub. When I listen to the media, because I have nothing to do now most of the time, kind of people, the charlatans who go and advise the policymakers should be actually us. The national policies should be decided upon from the universities. The universities must be the hub from which you can actually access all the literature that has got. We can condense it to find out what should be done. I'm a surgeon and I take accidents. Now the accidents, the highest percentage of accidents are to pedestrians. But I see today a lot of pavements being removed and the roads are being broadened. So who's advising? The advice should come from people, from establishments like this. So I suggest that we also move towards getting a hub status for medical information so that we can proceed to supply authentic information to the politicians or those who have policies. Then there's another thing that we can do. I'm sorry, I hope I'm taking a lot of time. Now, Professor Nimal Senaka retired. I know he took with him an enormous input of information on epilepsy in Sri Lanka. What if we all got together and got a monograph series, Peradeniya monograph series, where people who retire can collect and collect information that they have developed throughout their lifetime, and like once upon a time there were rhinosporidosis by Professor in Colombo, collect it and then print it and perhaps get even a printing organization inside the faculty. And as a clinician also I would recommend databases. Now there can be databases that can be collected over a large period. We keep it computerized, we advertise it to young researchers, and they can use the databases to produce postgraduate degrees. The one problem I had so far is simply because you lose seniority the moment you go into a research project. What you do is, the health ministry has to be altered to accept about 2 or 3 years from a young person's life as a medical person to stay away from clinical medicine or whatever else, but do research and contribute and not lose seniority but come back into the system. It would be a great thing. And the last thing I would like to talk to you about is we have always been the followers. I think Dr. Spittle, way back in 1929, said that we follow, why don't we go forward? Why do we always have to follow medical developments? We should do it, but we should also develop an innovation and try to get in our field, in our areas of expertise, to come to the front, become world knowledge, people with knowledge and can dispense it to the world. This would be a fine opportunity for others in the field, various fields that are necessarily topical, to actually move forward. So with that I'll close, but wish all the Congress lectures and discussions all in the days to come all success. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We are most grateful for your insight and wonderful remarks. May I now request the dignitaries of the head table to take their seats in the front row of the audience, please.
Professor Ranjit Kumar Sirvitana, President of PeMSAA, will now introduce the chief guest, Dr. George Michael van der Putten, and hand over the token of appreciation.
Dr. George Michael van der Putten. Dr. Michael graduated from the Faculty of Agriculture at Peradeniya in 1974 and worked as an assistant lecturer in the faculty before going abroad for his higher studies. He obtained his master's and doctorates from the University of Guelph in Canada, and upon returning to Sri Lanka, lectured at the faculty for a few years before departing to Canada, where he studied mathematics and computer science to follow a different course in his career. He excelled in the field of IT, information technology, working for the financial and insurance industry, and finally as a consultant on IBM mainframe databases. While in Canada, he was active in entomological studies and pursued his interest in butterflies and was an active member of the Toronto Epidemiologist Association, contributing many important observations on many rare species. He retired from his work as a consultant a decade ago and returned to Sri Lanka to pursue his lifelong interest in the butterflies and nature of the island. Based on their studies, fulfilling the urgent need for an update on the biology of butterflies of the island, in 2016, he and his wife published The Butterfly Fauna of Sri Lanka. That is 68 years after the previous similar publication done by Woodhouse in 1948. Dr. Michael's seminal work was widely hailed as a key publication that set a high bar for subsequent work. Dr. Michael also edited and was the chief contributor to the Butterfly Conservation Action Plan of Sri Lanka in 2012, the first taxon-specific action plan for the country. He also authored the taxonomy and conservation status of butterflies in Sri Lanka in 2012. He has shared his knowledge with professionals and amateurs alike and has made numerous presentations to students in universities and schools and to members of various public and private organizations to promote the conservation of butterflies in Sri Lanka. In addition, he has published numerous articles on butterflies in international and peer-reviewed scientific journals as well as in journal publications. He and his wife, I think in time to come, will publish a new publication called Field Guide to the Butterflies of Sri Lanka. Now I would like to invite Dr. Michael van der Putten to accept the token of appreciation as the chief guest and deliver the lecture. All right.
I'm used to walking about as I speak, so I don't think I have that luxury today. Distinguished members of the academic community, distinguished members of the medical fraternity, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to be here, and I'd like to thank Professor Kumarasiri for inviting me here for the inaugural address of the PeMSAA conference this year. It is a subject that is very dear to my heart, as you would have gathered from the introduction that he gave. And I'm going to speak to you about the butterfly fauna of Sri Lanka. In fact, that is what I promised, but I'm afraid I had to backtrack on that because it's too broad a subject. So I'm going to focus my attention on some aspects of the complex and interesting lives of butterflies. How does that sound? And I have a series of slides to get through. So without much ado, I'm going to go straight into my presentation so that I can take my full 40 minutes that I was allocated. And I was advised that I should not exceed that. And my wife tells me that I often talk too much. So just hang in there. So for the benefit of the people who are not all that familiar with this subject, I thought instead of calling it the strategies of survival of Lepidopterans in Sri Lanka, I thought I'll select a much simpler, a more catchy phrase, and I thought I'll call it the clever butterflies. And I'm going to talk about the survival strategies of butterflies and give you some idea as to how complex and how interesting these butterflies are. And I must admit that my main purpose here is to try to see whether I can get some converts at the end of this talk to my course, which is, of course, butterfly conservation in Sri Lanka. Let's see whether I'll be very successful. It depends on how many people come up to me and speak. So there it is. So let me, without much ado, let me get to my slides and give you an idea of what this presentation is all about. And I like to present this in a much lighter tone than I would otherwise in a conference where academics would be wanting much more details. But I take into consideration the fact that not many of you are familiar with the lives of butterflies, so I'll go a little slow. So let me start at the very beginning. Butterflies are a very interesting group of butterflies. They play a very important part in the ecological process and have various survival strategies to overcome the hostile environment in which they live. Now, you might think that butterflies are lovely things flying around and they sort of beautify our environment. All that is true, but they live in an extraordinary hostile environment. And from the time that they are born, there are predators and parasitoids and all kinds of things ready to eat them. So let me start at the very beginning. The butterflies have a 4-stage life cycle, and you are all familiar with that. But in case that you have never seen a butterfly lay eggs, and here's one. This is a very poisonous species, and it can take its own time to lay its eggs because no bird will eat it. As you can see, it has what you call aposematic coloration. That means very contrasting colors, bright red, white, black, to show the birds, to show potential predators that it is very, very poisonous. So here it is laying eggs. This particular butterfly might lay up to 150 eggs, and it might take about 10 minutes to do so. So the moment they are laid, they are going to be under pressure from all sorts of enemies. So let's have a look at some of those enemies. The first are the parasitoids. These are exceptionally small wasps, which are capable of locating these eggs and laying their eggs inside the eggs of the butterflies. And they may lay up to 10, 15 eggs per egg. So they can cause enormous damage to butterfly populations by infecting these eggs. Now, this is another slide. Do I have a pointer? Okay. You can see some of these parasitoids. These are very, very small flies. By judging by the size of the eggs, you could say that. And it's very interesting to know how these guys find these eggs. Now, remember, in a forest, there are thousands and thousands and millions of leaves. How do these little fellows find all the eggs? Well, they have techniques. One of the techniques is for the parasitoids, or these little wasps, to first go in search of the tree on which the butterflies lay eggs. Butterflies are very, very specific to the host plant on which they lay eggs. They may have 2 or 3 at the most, maybe 4, but they're very specific. So these parasitoids know exactly where to go in order to find where these eggs are. So once they hone in on the chemical stimulus, chemical signature of a particular plant, then they start circling the plant and locating these eggs. And of course, they will lay their eggs and they will feed on them and finish their generation in there. Now, there are lots of other things that eat butterfly eggs as well and reduce their populations. And this is a jumping spider. And there's a little egg here. I don't know whether you can see that. And we wash this and it actually empties it. It sucks it out, clean and dry. So, and then there are, of course, the red ants, which will destroy. In fact, when this bit this egg, you could see some of the cell contents ooze out and fall on the leaf. And sometimes its own species, and especially in the case of batch layers, the larva might come out and eat an entire cluster of eggs, which is very, very unusual because you would perhaps wonder what is the evolutionary advantage in having this kind of behavior. I'm afraid I can't answer that question right now, but it does happen in nature now and again. Now, apart from the eggs themselves being eaten, now what are the techniques that butterflies use to protect these eggs? One thing, of course, is to lay them on something which is extremely well camouflaged. And here's an example. I don't know whether you can pop the egg on this. I put an egg, enlarged one, and that is the egg. This is a nettle with all these very fine hairs on it, and it'll lay the egg right there, and it becomes virtually invisible. It's very, very difficult. In fact, I saw this butterfly lay this egg here, and I had to search for quite a while to get a good image of it. And here's another one. This is an egg, and in fact, this butterfly is very, very interesting because it lays eggs only on blotched leaves. The leaf has to be damaged, and there is a very specific coleopteran beetle. It's a species of Olocophora that comes and eats the surface, and it is only then that this butterfly will lay its eggs on it, and they're perfectly camouflaged. It's very difficult to find them, and the only way that I found it, of course, is I saw it laying that egg. And this is what the egg looks like. This is what the egg looks like, and it's a remarkable structure because as soon as the egg is laid, these filaments straighten out. And I believe that there is a chemical reaction which takes place in combination with oxygen, and the chemical structure of that spike, the stake changes, and it straightens up. And these are very, very sticky. And any parasitoid wasp that thinks of coming and infecting this egg is going to get stuck, and it's going to die. And I thought I'll just show you the butterfly that comes out of this process. This is the egg of this particular butterfly. And it's a very rare species. People in Peradeniya should see this if you go up to Anthem. It's the headquarters of this butterfly. The time that I was in Peradeniya, I used to go to the guest house up at Anthem, and there's a stream there, and I used to never not see this butterfly. It's a very interesting one to watch. It's quite beautiful. And another technique that most butterflies would use is to lay their eggs and make them resemble some other inanimate object. Now, this is a gall. This is an irritation which is caused by a wasp larva, and as a result of the irritation, it produces these galls. And this is actually the egg of the butterfly, and they look remarkably similar. And unless, now even a visually hunting predator like a wasp would have considerable difficulty in locating these eggs. And I've given you a sort of an enlarged image of these two. There's the egg, and there's the fake gall that looks like an egg. Now, there are lots of other strategies that butterfly females use as well to avoid predation. And here's another one. Now, I don't know whether you can see this. There's a little ant here. And this butterfly will lay eggs on this plant only if this particular ant is there. And in fact, if you look at this in the field, what is so fascinating about it is that the ants actually rush to the female butterfly and even touch the abdomen, waiting for the egg to come out. And that's exactly what you see here. If that's the abdomen, that's a sort of a blow up of this particular region. And you can see this ant. Similarly here, this is, of course, a Dimia, Ecophila sparagdina, the red ant of Sri Lanka, and it's laying an egg, and it'll come right there, and it is to protect the egg. And you will see shortly in the next few slides why they protect the egg as well. I'll give you the story then. And then there are the others, of course, that would conceal the egg so well with this ovipositor. This is an extremely thin needle-like structure, and it will insert it right into the inflorescence where it is completely concealed, and no parasitoid can see it, or flies or any predator. And this is also a very interesting one. These guys would lay eggs on completely unplant-like structures, like here. It's on a rock. It'll lay like, but what it'll do first is this. It'll fly around to see whether the food plant on which its larva feeds is found. It'll circle, 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 and it'll say, oh, yep, there are a lot of plants here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay the eggs on a piece of gravel, on a piece of rock, or on a piece of dead wood. And the reason is what I told you before. Some of these parasitoids, some of these wasps, hone in on the eggs by their chemical signature. So what this guy does is he tries to disguise himself. He puts the egg in a place where the wasp can't find, so that when the larva emerges from this egg, it will find its way into the larval food plant close by. So it's another strategy that they employ. Very effective, very effective. Now, what are the other strategies that the larvae adopt in order to survive? Of course, you can see this. It looks very beautiful. It's a highly poisonous species. Birds don't usually eat it. In fact, it is advertising itself and saying, I'm not good to eat. I'm beautiful, but don't eat me because you're going to die. Indeed, this one feeds on a plant called Parasitoids, which has poisonous chemicals, and it assimilates this inside its hemolymph, inside its blood, and carries it right to the adult stage, and every stage is protected from predators, particularly birds. And this is another one, very interesting. These are different butterflies. In this case, this is Calotropis, Vara, as they call in Sinhalese. And once it hatches out from the egg, what it will do is it will cut a trench. And everybody knows that Vara has a very, very poisonous latex. It has all sorts of cardinaloids and poisonous chemicals, which medical people would probably know that it has something that binds ATPase in heart muscles, and it gives you heart attacks and so on and so forth. And that's the poison that it tries to avoid during the early stages. So it cuts the trench, the latex oozes out. In fact, it completes a circle, and then it will feed on the contents inside to avoid the latex being consumed. Now, what is really interesting is that although it tries to avoid the latex ingestion, invariably some of them will ingest and some of them do die, but most develop a very high degree of resistance, and as the instars change and they become bigger and bigger, they can consume without bleeding the leaves altogether. So another interesting adaptation. And of course, you can see what this is all about. This is camouflage. There's actually a caterpillar here. These are wonderfully camouflaged, and I don't think even a bird can pick it up that easily. Visually hunting predators will have a tough time trying to see a caterpillar there. These are another interesting one. Another technique that the larvae use is to create shelters. What they do is they wrap up a leaf and stay inside so that the birds can't get at them, or the predators or parasitoids or whatever. So, and how does it do it? How does it actually roll this? I wonder if any one of you have actually seen this in the field. For the medical people who are all stressed out and who have busy lives, I recommend you go out into the field and spend some time and relax and enjoy looking at some of these things. After all, your theme of your conference is well-being and compassion and so on and so forth. It has some therapeutic value, believe me. So anyway, so what it does is this. It first cuts a thin strip like that. It bites through. And then you can see little strands here, right? So what it will do is it will put a strand of its silk. It has special glands, silk glands, and it will put one dab here and another dab here, and it stretches. And one remarkable property about this silk is that it contracts on air, on exposure to air. It reacts with oxygen and it starts contracting. And little by little, it starts pulling the leaves together. And that's exactly what's happening here. It's rolling up the leaves. And at some point, it'll creep in, and then, of course, it'll stay in there. It'll start eating from here. It'll start eating from here, and it's all the way through. It'll start on the next leaf as it gets larger and larger. This is another interesting strategy. Are you keeping time? Okay. Do I have a red light coming on when my time's up? Okay. This is another interesting strategy. A bird looking, a visually hunting predator, for instance, looking at this, will think it's a bird dropping. And in fact, if it goes to inspect it, 90% of the time, it will probably find a bird dropping like this. So by experience, it will say, you know what? I'm not going to go after this from a distance because most probably I'll get a bird dropping. So it will start ignoring this. And interesting, these guys will stay right on top of a leaf where all the birds can see, and they'll deceive the bird. In fact, they are very, very successful at it. But then remember, as it grows bigger and bigger and bigger, even a bird dropping can only become that big. Okay, at some point it's become too large for a bird dropping. So then it changes strategy and it assumes this configuration. In fact, this is the final instar of the larva, and it changes completely to blend with the surroundings, which is green in color. And not only that, in fact, if a bird comes along and tries to peck at this, it has another strategy. It puts out its hospitarians. These are specialized organs which are everted out whenever a predator comes along and pecks at it or something like that. And it emits a very, very strong scent. It's some sort of butyric acid compound. And of course, and also combined with the image of the snake, it really does scare a snake, and it'll take it by surprise and it'll fly away. So they employ all kinds of strategies to survive as larvae. Another one is the moment you touch it, or a bird comes along, it just falls from the leaf, and it can be from any height, and it hangs from a thread. In fact, it will make sure that the thread sticks onto the leaf surface, and it'll jump off. It's very interesting. Watch it, and it'll sort of fall down, and when the danger is gone, it'll climb up using its legs and its feet again. And this, incidentally, is the butterfly from this particular larva. Very rare species. If you want to see this, you've got to go to the Knuckles Conservation Area. It's the only place that you'll see it in Sri Lanka. It's a beautiful butterfly. And here are other strategies. They have associations with ants, which are very, can impart a very, very powerful bite, and can be quite a sting if you get these demias or the red ants. Now, how does this happen? So this is the larva, the caterpillar, and all these guys hang around here, and of course, nothing is free. In turn, for the protection that the larva gets, the larva has to give something. And indeed, it has a specialized gland here, which is called the sugar gland, and it will give a small bubble of sugar now and again to appease the ants. Now, if you watch this in the field, it's very interesting because these ants get very, very impatient. And because this guy doesn't want to part with his sugar, because there is this balance, right? On the one hand, I had to give sugar. I can't give too much because that will affect my growth. So there has to be a balance struck. So often this guy wouldn't give any sugar, and then this guy really gives a hard bite. And then the larva responds and gives the appropriate sugar bubble, and the fellow is happy. So that's another association. I put this one, I mean, it looks like an ordinary larva, but this too has a very interesting defense strategy. What it will do is if you touch it, it will spew out all these gucky stuff from its mouth, which are, of course, the tongue stuff that they had eaten, and it's a very unpleasant smell, and it immediately falls onto the ground. And so the birds probably will not, I haven't seen birds attacking it, but that's one of the strategies that it employs. Okay, so much for the larvae. So let me move on to the pupae, or the chrysalis as they call it. These are the enemies. Again, wasps, flies that parasitize them, they'll come and inject it. And of course, it develops inside, and this is an exit hole of one of the parasitoids, and that's the death of it. Another enemy, sometimes the larvae themselves can eat the pupae, and this is an illustration of that. And and of course, birds, garden lizards, beetles, and spiders, they all prey on pupae of butterflies. Interesting strategy. Another strategy is to be inside the fruit and not come out. And this is how it stays. And this is, in fact, it even puts a trapdoor. This trapdoor does not allow other insects to get in. And it controls the relative humidity quite well. And it stays there. And when it emerges, what is fascinating about this is this guy always pupates here, exactly 1 centimeter from the hole, with the head pointing towards the hole, so that the moment it emerges, it goes straight into the hole, opens the flap and gets out. Because any delay in exit, and the wings will unfold and it will not be able to get out. So it's a highly precision job to make sure that it gets out in time and the wings expand. And here's another classic example of a pupa escaping predators by camouflage. This looks like a little stick with a snapped off top here. And this is actually another butterfly in Sri Lanka, which is an excellent mimic in all its life stages. Again, here, another pupa that advertises itself saying, "I am poisonous, don't eat me." And indeed, these are poisonous pupae. And another strategy, of course, is that once the larva pupates, they are all surrounded by these ants. And no predator would get close to these because it's highly likely that they'll get eaten up. So they get a great deal of protection by its association with ants. And this is the butterfly that emerges from this. It's quite a pretty butterfly, butterfly of the Lycinid group. Okay, now, am I doing okay with time? We don't have any response. I think I have 6 more minutes. Enemies of adult butterflies. And of course, birds are one of the principal predators of adult butterflies, as you can see here. And there's a damaged wing. You can always say when a bird has attacked a butterfly because the break is very sharp, as you can see here, unlike here and here. And this is a bird attack. This is probably a garden lizard, and this is probably a garden lizard as well. And it's really interesting that even though that it has lost much of its wing, it can still fly very effectively. In fact, I have seen worse specimens than this that can still fly around, mate, lay eggs, and complete their life cycles quite successfully. And here are other predators of enemies of adults. Robber flies. They're extremely clever at catching these small butterflies. Spiders. They can camouflage themselves quite well. Stay on a leaf or a flower and then catch these guys as they come to nectar. And this is a well-camouflaged mantid eating away. This is in my backyard that I took a photograph one day. And even dragonflies, they're very clever. They are extraordinary flyers. They catch butterflies now and again and have a meal of it. So all sorts of enemies out there in the environment. And of course, what are the strategies that they employ in order to avoid these predators and parasitoids? Well, here it is. These 2 or these 3 exemplify one group. These are aposemitic colorations. These are advertising themselves as extremely poisonous. In fact, these are very poisonous to avian predators. Birds will not attack this. In fact, they're so confident of their poisons and their ability to outsmart the birds, they'll fly with the birds at 6 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning. Even though the flocks of birds in the forest are flying around, they'll still be flying with them. And in fact, nectaring as well. And of course, one of the adaptations that they have is to fly early, which means that they can also outcompete the other butterflies that come later on in the day. So they have first crack at nectar, which is highly advantageous because from a survival's perspective, it serves them well. And of course, this guy is very palatable to birds. It's the 2nd largest butterfly in Sri Lanka called the blue mormon. And its strategy is to fly fast. And it flies very fast. And also, it's a zigzag motion, side to side, sways a lot. All of a sudden goes over a treetop, comes down. It's very difficult for birds to catch this butterfly. And it does not fly at 6 or 7 in the morning. It waits till after 9. Because that's the time that the birds take their break until 4 o'clock in the evening. So there are all sorts of interesting things that you can watch in the field as to how these butterflies escape potential predators. And here's another technique that it uses. This is a poisonous species. And of course, it obtains its poisons from a vine called Aristolochia. Sapsanda, they call it in Sinhalese. It has aristolochic acids, which it is in its body during the larval stages and then passes it on to the adults through the pupa. And there's another one which looks very, very similar. In fact, this guy mimics this guy. Looks very, very similar. And this class of butterflies, which are the papilionids, they fly fast usually. But this guy will fly very much slower than other papilionids, and it will fly like this guy. In fact, it imitates it beautifully. And a lot of people who, come with me on field trips often misidentify this and this. And I sort of tell them, this is actually the one that is not poisonous. This is the poisonous species. And the way you can say it is by looking at the abdomen. Bright red, bright black. This one just has a black abdomen. And of course, if you look at these butterflies, often in the field, you begin to realize the differences quite easily. Same thing here. Poisonous species that feeds on Calotropis, Vara, and this is a non-poisonous species, and it's an excellent mimic of this one. Flies just like this guy, behaves just like this guy, and everything about it is very, very similar to the poisonous species. So a lot of butterflies mimic. These are called models, and these are the mimics. So that's another strategy that they employ. Now, anybody seen this one? Nobody in the audience, or are you asleep? Okay, this is a very interesting butterfly to watch in the field because this is a brilliant blue and it shines in the sunlight like you wouldn't believe it. It is really, really a gorgeous butterfly. And it is not a nectar lover. It never visits flowers. It loves to have alcohol. If you want to attract this to your garden or in the forest, take some rotting mangoes and put some arak and some toddy, and I can guarantee you that this guy would come, because he's a notorious drunkard. He just likes it. That's just the way it is. These on the forest floor, and oh, I got my slide the other way around. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So it's a brilliant blue, and what's the strategy that it uses to escape predators? The moment, incidentally, butterflies' eyes are extraordinarily sensitive to movement. They have a compound eye and they see different facets of the environment, but the important thing is that they can detect motion much, much more acutely than humans can, because they have so many eyes. The slightest movement causes the neural activity in maybe 200 ommatidia, the small eyes. So because of that, they're very, very sensitive to movement. So the moment a predator comes by, guess what it'll do? It'll take into the air or close by, and it disappears. It just closes its wings immediately, and it becomes invisible. So it's an excellent technique. Now remember, a visually hunting predator is looking at a blue object. The guy is looking for something blue, right? I need something shiny and blue. I want to eat this guy. But he disappears. And I have seen birds perch so close to it, but the bird doesn't see it, because the image that the bird has in its head is the blue color, and what they see is something completely different. And so it escapes very, very confidently. In fact, it is so confident, it will not make a move, even if it's a centimeter away from it. And it has another strategy. Sometimes, if it can't make it to the ground, it'll go settle on a leaf, a dried leaf. And it'll immediately turn around, always put its tail to this and hang like this. And I can guarantee you that this looks incredibly similar to a dried up leaf. And I have also seen a modification of this. In fact, some of them have broken tails. So now what do? It is really, really interesting, because they'll settle like this, but then they'll sway as if they're in the wind attached to a cobweb. And you really think it's a leaf caught in a cobweb swaying in the wind. So it's a remarkable adaptation, and I think very few of these guys get caught to birds. Of course, they might be caught by mantises and other things, but insofar as birds are concerned, it's a challenge to them. Another technique that another group of butterflies, the Lycinidae, use, the blues, and here you can see actually what they try to do is this: I'm willing to sacrifice my tails, but not my head. So because this looks very much like a head, which is this: the eyes, the antennae, and the front legs, and so on and so forth. So a predator looking at it from up there, above it, will think, oh, I have some butterfly that I can feed on, and it'll attack this. And of course, the butterfly flies away free, because that's the head, and that's not the head. And similarly, if it's looking from the side, it'll look something like this. I have another picture of it. And here too, it's the same thing: eye, antenna, two front legs. And also, to sort of make the deception even more, what it'll do is it'll rub its the hind wings back and forth. So it looks very much like the head. Another technique is, of course, false eyes. And this again is to sacrifice a less important part of the body in order to survive. And visually hunting predators are most likely to go for the eye, because that's where the head is. They'll get a piece of it, but they'll escape quite without harming the head and the abdomen. And this is another technique, false eyes, and usually it looks like this. And this is what they call the startling technique. All of a sudden, if a predator comes and sits there, it'll open its wings at once, and it'll look more like an owl. Or people still don't know how this works, but it does work, because in experiments under controlled conditions, we know that this certainly does work. Because to me, this doesn't look like an owl, but it seems to work for some reason. Now, I think I have 1 more minute. I think I've given you a sort of overview of the threats that butterflies face, but despite all the adaptations that they have evolved over the millions of years that they have lived, there is one threat that they probably will never overcome, and that's the anthropogenic activities, the activities of man. We are the greatest threat. We destroy all our forests, we cut down timber, we plant agricultural plants, we have human habitations, we introduce all sort of exotic plants which run amok. We just had to walk outside here and you'll see all the Panicum repens, the guinea grass, which are just wiping out acres and acres of habitats everywhere, including the dry zone and intermediate zone. If you go to Mana, you will see Proposis julifera, one of the plants that is invading the marsh areas. And I can go, the list is as long as you can imagine, page after page. So there is a great destruction of our environment. We are losing many of our butterflies. And I believe that by the end of the century, we would certainly have some of our butterflies going extinct, because these are in habitat specialists which cannot survive outside those specialized environments. And however, on the plus side, there are organizations, young people together, the Butterfly Conservation Action Plan with about 200 young members. They are pushing policymakers to, it is gaining ground. And I'm so glad that people with their little digital cameras going around and taking pictures, putting them on the Facebook and making people aware of it. In fact, one of the reasons why I came here was to entice you to support and to be aware of the plight of butterflies and how important the conservation of butterflies in Sri Lanka are. And please remember, they contribute immensely to the ecological processes, like, for instance, they are pollinators. They are incredibly important pollinators in maintaining forest continuity. They also, don't forget, they are extraordinarily important for birds because the fledgling birds are virtually all fed with butterfly larvae or moth larvae, and that's an extraordinarily important contribution to their growth and development. No larvae, no caterpillars, you're not going to have birds, because they really do depend on a very good source of proteins in the early stages of development. And also, it might also interest you to know that there are certain butterflies that feed on weed plants, and in fact, if they're not there, you can expect some of these, some of these not so weedy plants to become very weedy in the future, because they do keep a lot of plants in check. And if you are not sure about that, try growing some Aristolochia, which is the food plant of some of the butterflies that I showed you. It's very difficult. If you don't have them, they'll go wild. I can guarantee you that. And the only thing that keeps them in check are the butterfly larvae. So they are a very important group. They are a charismatic group, and also for aesthetic reasons, I think we all appreciate seeing something beautiful in our gardens and in our forests. And of course, I think philosophically speaking, I do believe that all living beings, including butterflies, have an innate right to exist by themselves, in and of themselves. So I hope that you will become more and more aware of these issues. And for those physicians and surgeons and people associated in the medical profession, I strongly suggest that you take a day off now and again and go see butterflies. Thank you very much. I'm 3 minutes late. I would like to entertain some questions. I know this is irregular, but nevertheless. The question is the activities of man with respect to use of insecticide and weedicides. Now, of course, insecticides have a direct influence on butterfly larvae, eggs, as well as adults. That goes without questioning, because their target audience are insects, to kill insects. So although farmers in general tend to restrict their applications to the agricultural areas, you'll be amazed at the amount of drift that takes place in these areas. In fact, we have done some surveys, and around paddy fields, for instance, where there are forested areas, there are no butterflies, no larvae, because the drift is sufficient to kill most of these stages of butterflies. So that's one thing. Now, weedicides, you might wonder, weedicides generally don't kill insects. They do indirectly, because they kill the larval food plants. If you kill the larval food plants, they will die of starvation, of not having the right type of vegetation to feed on. So weedicides and pesticides have a very, very deleterious effect on the populations of butterflies. And I think judicious use of these compounds is very, very important if you want to conserve our butterflies. Because we got to eat as well, right? I mean, agriculture is an enterprise where people do use these chemicals, and one has to be very careful in its usage. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. Unfortunately, yes, in fact, the comment that Ratnatunga made was that spraying for dengue, it certainly will affect, because these are broad spectrum insecticides. They are not targeted to the particular species of Culex or whatever species of mosquito that you're talking about. And we have the same problems in Canada, but the citizens there raise hell when they spray these things. So even the use of bacteria, for control of these larvae, there's a great deal of concern, because they affect other organisms as well, unfortunately. Now, of course, Colombo is a relegated habitat where not very many butterflies are found. So the impact on the important species that we talk about are minimal. Yeah. The question is, why are they called butterflies? Now, well, there are all kinds of stories. Now, when I got this question before, and I went to Professor Google and asked how we got this name butterfly. And there are all sorts of contradicting stories about it. But I think the one that stuck in my mind was that in Europe, or in England in particular, there was a butterfly that was very, very common during the time, which is a sort of a yellow-colored butterfly. So it was sort of butter-colored, so they said they called it a butterfly, and that's how the name started. So.
Thank you, sir, for opening our minds to the wonderful world of butterflies. Maybe the remaining questions can be discussed over refreshments. Yeah. Now, Professor Ranjit Kumarasiri, President of PeMSAA, will introduce the Congress lecturer, Professor Anuja Premawardana, and award the medal for the Congress lecturer.
Professor Anuja Padmanath Premawardana. Professor Premawardana did his primary and secondary education at the Trinity College, Kandy, and entered to the Faculty of Medicine, Peradeniya, in 1983. He obtained distinctions in medicine, pediatrics, forensic medicine, community medicine, pharmacology, parasitology, so many subjects, and he topped the batch with first classes in second and third MBBS, and passed final with second class. He won many awards and prizes during his undergraduate days. Dan Choi Nadaboy Gold Medal for Medicine, Asari Gold Medal for Best Performance at the third MBBS exam, P.B. Panabokke Scholarship for Greatest Competence at the PBS exam, Mrs. P.B. Panabokke Award for Greatest Competence in Forensic Medicine in 1990, P.B. Panabokke and Mrs. P.B. Panabokke Award for Greatest Competence in Pathology in 1990, Dr. Chalmers Gold Medal for Anatomy in 1985, Dr. C.B. Dharmasena Gold Medal for second MBBS in 1985, and Emily Vikramnayaka Prize for second MBBS in 1985. He was the first in the All Ireland Merit List in 1992. received the Commonwealth Scholarship and studied at Oxford University. There he completed deep in clinical medicine on hemoglobin E beta thalassemia in 2002. He obtained MRCP UK in 2001, FRCP London 2008, and FCCP in 2010. He joined the Faculty of Medicine, University of California in 1994 and promoted to Senior Professor in Medicine in 2016. He was selected as Fellow of the National Academy of Science, Sri Lanka in 2014. His research interests are in hemoglobinopathies and iron metabolism. On this area of research, he has published more than 40 full papers and 50 abstracts. He received presidential awards every year from 1999 to 2012 and again in 2015. He was a SLMA orator in 2004 and 2018. He was a recipient of SLMA Vijayaram Award for Best Paper in 3 occasions. He set up the hemoglobinopathy screening laboratory in 2003 at North Colombo Teaching Hospital, which was the first to incorporate HPLC for thalassemia screening in Sri Lanka. He established the Adolescent and Adult Thalassemia Center in the North Colombo Teaching Hospital, which remains the only specialized adult thalassemia care center in the country. He is a founder member of the National Thalassemia Council from 2007 up to now, and founder member of the Asian Thalassemia Network and its Sri Lankan representative. Now I would like to invite Professor Anuja Premwardana to accept the Congress Medal for PeMSAA and to deliver the PeMSAA Congress lecture.
Most respected teachers, University of Peradeniya Faculty of Medicine, the Deputy Vice-Chancellor, the Dean of the Faculty of Medicine, the Chief Guest, Professor Channarathatunga sir, the Honorable Guest of Honor, the Butterfly Man. Thank you so much, Professor Kumar Siri, for those the very generous words of introduction. And I should thank the Congress Committee of the PeMSAA for having awarded me this very prestigious Congress lecture. I hope I'll be able to live up to your expectations. Over the next 40 minutes, I'll be talking to you on a rather peculiar subject, what the genes tell you about the story of thalassemia in Sri Lanka. Hemoglobin disorders, or thalassemia in particular, is the commonest monogenic disease in the world. It affects over 360 million people carry the genes, and every year 400,000 are born across the world with the severe forms of the disease. This map shows you the distribution of alpha and beta thalassemia in the world. As you can see, it's spread in the tropical and the subtropical regions of the world. Sister diseases of thalassemias are the structural variants are also spread in the same regions. Sickle cell disease is spread amongst the Africans, Indo-Arabic region, and in the Mediterranean communities. A very important hemoglobin disorder called hemoglobin E is found in Southeast Asians and Southern Asian people. Now, hemoglobin disorders in a particular community, the prevalence of which depends on the rate of mutation, spontaneous mutations. It could be introduced to a community through a traveler into an isolated community. That's called the founder effect. If this mutation is found to be advantageous to that community, over successive generations, the prevalence of that mutation will increase, and that's called natural selection. Inbreeding will increase the rate of that mutation, especially through consanguineous marriage. And of course, when you travel, you take the genes with you. The objective of my talk is to see how these 5 factors have interplayed in the prevalence of hemoglobinopathies in Sri Lanka, and I'll try to back it up with scientific evidence. Before I talk about science, let me talk of some history. The first hemoglobinopathy ever to be described in the world was not thalassemia, but was sickle cell disease. It was a Grenadian, a West Indian dental student by the name of Walter Clement Noel, who was studying dentistry in Chicago, who was the first ever patient to be identified. He was unfortunate to develop the illness while he was studying dentistry in Chicago itself. Then he was admitted with severe respiratory distress and leg ulcers. And in this particular hospital was a very diligent intern medical officer called Dr. Ernest Irons. He took notes of what he saw, and he even drew the cells he saw in the blood picture. He had never seen anything like that before, and he brought it to the notice of his boss, a doctor called James Herrick. James Herrick, 7 years later, wrote up this work, and James Herrick became the legend of sickle cell. Unfortunately, James Herrick never acknowledged the work of his intern medical officer. Several years later, thalassemia was described by yet another American called Thomas Cooley. Cooley, in 1925, he was working in Michigan as a pediatrician and a hematologist. He was seeing lots of Mediterranean children in the United States in his clinic who were Greeks and Italians who had a very peculiar disorder. They were anemic, had gross splenomegaly, hepatomegaly, jaundice, and also had mongoloid facial appearances. He decided to call it erythroblastic anemia. There was no such condition then, and he presented his work at the American Pediatric Society in 1925. And what Thomas Cooley may have seen in 1925 may have been children like this, Italians, who certainly did not look like Italians. The name changed to Mediterranean anemia because these American children with the disease were all Italians, Greeks, and Cypriots. And somebody down the line glamorized by calling it thalassemia. Thalassa in Greek means the sea, emia in Latin means blood. The anemia which arose from the Great Sea, and the Great Sea they were referring to was, of course, the Mediterranean Sea. It's a curious fact that several years later, in fact 30 years later, in 1954, when they first described thalassemia in Thailand, a country that now we know has almost 500,000 patients with thalassemia, they described it as Mediterranean anemia in Thailand. Facts that now we take for granted, that thalassemia is transmitted in a genetic fashion, did not come easy. It took almost 1940 by the time people realized that thalassemia is transmitted in a genetic way. In Sri Lanka, the first case of thalassemia was described by the famous pediatrician Professor De Silva. Professor De Silva was the professor of pediatrics in University of Colombo, and he described 4 Sinhalese children, 2 slightly older children, siblings, and 2 very young children who died even before he could finish writing up his paper. He was fascinated by the discovery of thalassemia in Sinhalese children, because at the time thalassemia was described by him, there were only 9 Indians, all from Calcutta, 1 Chinese, and 2 Negroes, as he said, from the United States, besides the Mediterraneans from the United States that have been described. He then started a very interesting discussion in his paper. He wrote that the Sinhalese are of the same moderate stature as the Mediterranean race, according to Kuhn and anthropologists, who occupied the unbroken zone from Spain across the Straits of Gibraltar to Morocco and eastward. Shanklin, another anthropologist, found 2 varieties of the Mediterranean race living in the Transjordan and the Syrian deserts. The Basques, who are of the same stature as the Sinhalese and the Tamils, speak a language which, according to Kuhn, may have been brought from Western Asia. From these observations of Kuhn, Shanklin, and Shanmugam, Professor De Silva concludes that the Sinhalese are of Mediterranean stock. Now, in 1950s, Professor De Silva did not know that hemoglobinopathies have a worldwide distribution, and the term Mediterranean anemia may have been far too alluring to this great man. Then came another scientist called Herman Lehmann to the Sri Lankan scene. Dr. Herman Lehmann was German in origin, was working for the British Army. He was a clinical scientist who has just discovered sickle in the tribal Adivasi people in southern India who are living in the Nilgiri or the Blue Mountains. Having discovered sickle in the Adivasi people in the Nilgiri Mountains, he essentially postulated that the Sri Lankan Adivasis, the Veddas, must have sickle. So he came in hot pursuit looking for sickle in the Vedas, but he was in for a surprise. What he found when he studied 9 pure Vedas and almost pure Vedas was not sickle but hemoglobin E. This incidentally was only the 3rd report of hemoglobin E from the world. He was struck by the Veda bug and he stayed on in Sri Lanka, studied 300 more Vedas and found a prevalence of hemoglobin E in 10% of them. And then he made a very unusual comment. He said that hemoglobin E in Sri Lanka is only found in the Vedas, which was found to be incorrect because in 1958, Nagis Nagaratnam and in 1959, C.C. De Silva found hemoglobin E in the Sinhalese. And much later, in 1974, hemoglobin E was found in the Tamils, Muslims, and as well as in the Malays. However, the great man Lehmann's statement that E was only found in the Vedas meant that many Sri Lankans believed that if you had E in a Sri Lankan, you were a Veda. Sickle was found in Sri Lanka soon afterwards in 1962. Now, sickle has 2 distinct origins. It's found in Africans and it's found in the Indo-Arabic people. Now, in Africa, it originated 4 times in Senegal, Bantu, Benin, and Cameroon. And then it originated separately in the Indo-Arabic region. Now, Professor De Silva, C.C. De Silva, identified a Sinhalese family with sickle in Batticaloa. And then again, he was fascinated, how could this Sinhalese family have sickle who were in Batticaloa? He wrote that the Dutch who had colonized Sri Lanka, Ceylon, had got Africans from west of Africa. And the British who subsequently colonized Sri Lanka had got Africans from east of Africa. The family with sickle, the Sinhalese family with sickle, were only 30 miles from the Batticaloa fort. It's more than likely that some African ancestors might have been responsible for the presence of sickle in these families. Thus began the African theory of sickle in this country. It's absolutely true that there is African ancestry in some Sri Lankans. The so-called Kafir people in Sri Lanka, Kafir is a bad word in any other country, certainly not in Sri Lanka, though living in Puttlam is the best example. It's quite strange, though. The Kafir people in Sri Lanka do not have sickle. Almost soon afterwards, Dr. Nagis Nagaratnam identified a family with sickle D, double heterozygote for a structural variance from Hambantota. Following up on this work, having worked in the field of hemoglobinopathy for a long time perhaps, he did a very elegant study from Hambantota, a survey of sickling and hemoglobin D in the southern province of Hambantota much later in 1984. Dr. Narkis Nagaratnam concluded in this study and said that sickle is found in high frequency in Hambantota, high malaria and migratory movements from Arabs, not from Africans but Arabs, may have introduced the gene. Inbreeding and non-mixing of the population of the people in Hambantota may have propagated the gene further. In my opinion, Dr. Narkis Nagaratnam was way ahead of his time. When he left this country, unfortunately, during the civil strife in 1983, he had about 35 publications in the field of hemoglobinopathies. The limitations of most of this early work was that most of them were just case reports or case series. The only notable exception was the sickle survey of Dr. Narkis Nagaratnam from Hambantota. Unfortunately, there was no knowledge on the true epidemiological burden of hemoglobinopathies in the country. This was about to change in about mid-1990s with the arrival in this country of a great luminary, the form of Professor Sir David Weatherall. Now, for those of you who don't know him, he was at that stage the big professor, the Regius Professor in University of Oxford. He has just finished writing the textbook of medicine. We were studying it around that time, and he was the big name in thalassemia and one of the most celebrated people in the field. He had been invited by Professor Rizvi Sharif to speak at the College of Physicians quite by chance, and in the audience at the College of Physicians was this lady, Dr. Shantimali De Silva, a pediatrician in Purunegala who was grappling with the problem of thalassemia. The part they formed grew from strength to strength with the arrival of Professor Nancy Olivieri, a brilliant clinical scientist from Toronto. I was very fortunate to join this group in 1996 as a very senior registrar, and this was the original research group. The first thing we did was a micromapping survey where we screened 1,200 school children from 12 cities of the country. From this survey, we realized that the prevalence of beta thalassemia in the country, beta thalassemia trait, was 2.8%. The most important structural variant in this country was hemoglobin E trait, which occurred at the rate of 0.5%. Sickle and D Punjab did occur in the country, but they were rare. For the very first time, we were able to postulate or guesstimate the total number of patients taking treatment in the country using the Hardy-Weinberg law, and we realized that there must be about 2,000 to 3,000 patients taking treatment. 2/3 of them should be thalassemia major, and 1/3 should be having E-beta thalassemia. Now, E-beta thalassemia had been described, but was considered to be exotic and rare. We replicated this study at a much bigger scale in 2009. This study was again a school survey done in the immediate aftermath of the civil war, covering the entire island, all 25 districts. Here, we took blood samples from children from 72 secondary schools, 300 children from each district, and made sure that we covered all the major ethnic groups. From the blood samples that we collected, we did the full blood counts, did HPLC for hemoglobin analysis, extracted DNA, from which we did the beta genotyping and the alpha genotyping. When we identified altogether, there were 7,526 children, 52.9% were male, 62.3% were Sinhalese, 27.3% were Tamil, 10.4% were Moors. When we did the analysis, we found that out of the 7,526 children we have bled, 795 or 10.56% of the population had a hemoglobinopathy. We were in for a surprise. When we genetically characterized the mutations, we realized the commonest hemoglobinopathy in the country was not beta thalassemia, but was alpha thalassemia. In fact, the commonest alpha-thalassemia in this country was a mild 3.7 deletion, which had almost 542 out of the 795. Beta thalassemia trait was relegated to the second position. E trait was confirmed as the most important structural variant. Sickle and D was found but was uncommon. The other important finding from this survey was the enormous variation of the hemoglobinopathies from region to region. For instance, beta thalassemia prevalence varied from being non-existent in Kalutara to as high as 8% in Anuradhapura. Hemoglobin E varied from being non-existent in Kalutara to as high as 1.9% in Anuradhapura or Kurunegala. Likewise, alpha-thalassemia prevalence varied from being 2.8% in Gaul to 13.6% in Kurunegala. When you look at these pictures, it tells you, highlights the same story. You travel a distance about 150 kilometers from Anuradhapura to Hambantota. The prevalence of beta thalassemia would vary from 8% to 0.5%. You travel a similar distance from Kurunegala to Matara. The prevalence of hemoglobin E trait would vary from 1.9% to 0.3%. You travel the island from Ampara to Gampaha, a distance of about maybe 250 miles. The prevalence of alpha thalassemia would vary from 14% to just 3%. Now, why should the prevalence of a hemoglobinopathy vary so much within such relatively short geographical distances in a small island? Now, that's a question which had to be answered, and we did find the answer to that, and I'm going to come to the answer later in my lecture. Meanwhile, we had found the answer to another question. We molecularly characterized the causes of thalassemia in the country. This we did in 2003. For this, we identified 620 patients who were taking treatment for thalassemia. These were patients with severe thalassemia, essentially a third of all patients who were taking treatment for thalassemia in the transfusion centers. 578 were Sinhalese, 38 were Moors. Importantly, interestingly, there were only 3 Tamils. The majority of them had severe beta thalassemia, that is thalassemia major. As we had postulated using the Hardy-Weinberg calculation, the second commonest disorder in this country was E beta thalassemia. We genetically characterized 1,240 beta mutations, and we also did something called a haplotype analysis. Now in the world, there are 200 known beta mutations. In Sri Lanka, we identified 24 beta mutations. Though there were 24 mutations, just 3 of them accounted for almost 85% of all the mutations in our patients. IVS15G2C was the commonest mutation, accounted for more than half. IVS11G2A accounted for the second commonest mutation. And the third commonest beta mutation was hemoglobin E. In addition, we also identified 3 mutations which had never been described anywhere else in the world: a 13 base pair deletion, a consensus splice site mutation, and a frame shift mutation. Now, then came a very important question. Where did these mutations come from? Are these Sri Lankan, or did we get it from somebody else? To answer this question, you have to do something called a haplotype analysis. Now, the haplotype analysis is a very simple concept to answer. Haplotyping, you look not at the gene, but the surrounding regions of the gene. For example, if my friends are these guys, I am a gangster. I can't pretend to be a hermit. That's the same which you do in haplotype analysis. You look at the associates of the gene, and for example, in beta genes, there are 10 known haplotypes, and the haplotypes have been marked to different regions of the world, and you can know which part of the world the mutation came from. Because we had 24 mutations, we haplotyped all 24. Though we had 24, our interests were in the 3 common mutations. This is what I have to say. Hemoglobin E was found in haplotype 3 and haplotype 5. Now, this haplotype is found in Southeast Asia, but that's of no relevance to us. It's also found in Northeast India and Bengal. Those of you who know anything about Sri Lankan history would know the relevance of this region to Sri Lanka. The legendary Prince Vijay is supposed to have started his journey from the so-called Vangadesha. IVS 15G2C mutation is the commonest thalassemia mutation in India. And the haplotype in the Indians and our haplotype is identical. You may not like the Indians very much these days, but this is what we have. IVS 11G2A mutation is not found in India, but it's found in a very interesting region in the world. It's found in the Mediterranean region in Spain, but we have nothing to do with Spain, but it's from Portugal. The haplotype in the Portuguese and the haplotype in us is slightly different, but it can be explained with something called gene conversion. So, the beta mutations we have, E has come from Bengal, IVS 15 definitely from India, 11G2A is very likely to have come from the Portuguese. Has natural selection played any role in hemoglobinopathies in Sri Lanka? Now, unlike in Professor C.C. De Silva's time in the 1950s, now we know that thalassemia is not a Mediterranean disease. In fact, alpha-thalassemia is found in very high frequencies, in 30% in people of West African origin. Hemoglobin E is found in 55% of the general population in some part of Thailand. Now, why should any population have such high frequencies of a mutation of a disease gene unless it's of an advantage to the carrier? And that's what was suggested by Charles Darwin when he was speaking about natural selection. But at the time Charles Darwin was speaking about natural selection, he had no idea about thalassemia. The link between thalassemia and the naturally selecting factor was first suggested by the population biologist J.B.S. Haldane in 1949. He suggested that having thalassemia trait may protect against severe types of malaria. And this is called the Malaria Hypothesis. In 1949, when Haldane came up with this, everyone thought he was crazy because there was absolutely no evidence for this. But very soon, he was hailed as a hero because in 1954, Allison from the United Kingdom showed from a very elegant epidemiological study in Uganda that children with sickle cell trait are protected against severe forms of falciparum malaria. After the initial success, further proof of Haldane's malaria hypothesis was slow to come. The next arrived only in 1986 from the beautiful island of Papua New Guinea. Now, Papua New Guinea is just like Sri Lanka. It's an island, it's beautiful, it's only just off Australia. And just like Sri Lanka, it has Udaratian and Pahataratian. It has highlanders and lowlanders. But unlike in Sri Lanka, the Udaratian and Pahataratian are very genetically distinct. For instance, the lowlanders are constantly bombarded with malaria, whereas highlanders do not have malaria. From this epidemiological study, it was very clearly shown that the lowlanders with malaria have a very high incidence of alpha-thalassemia, whereas the highlanders do not have alpha-thalassemia. Now, has this ever been proven in Sri Lanka? That's exactly what we wanted to do with the population survey when we did the 7,526 children school survey in the 25 districts. We wanted to compare the hemoglobinopathy rates district to district and compare with the historical malaria data, and also try to compare with environmental factors like rainfall, altitude, and temperature region to region. This was the ideal time to see whether there were ethnic factors, whether the ethnicities mattered in thalassemia. And this is our results. Now, To compare whether malaria played a role, we were fortunate to have access to two very interesting studies done in 1920 and another one done in 1957. The 1920 study was a spleen rate survey, and the 1957 was a blood film survey done all island just before any eradication campaign had been carried out. And this is our results. It's a very simple slide to understand. In the background, in black and white, is malaria endemicity. The darker the region, higher the endemicity of malaria. As you can see, the northern regions have a lot of malaria. And in white are the regions with low incidence of prevalence of malaria. So Colombo, Gampaha, Kalutara, Galle has hardly any malaria. In green circles is prevalence of hemoglobinopathy. The bigger the circle, higher the prevalence of a hemoglobinopathy. So the regions which are dark have very big circles. So higher the prevalence of malaria, the bigger the incidence of thalassemia. And regions like Galle, Gampaha, Kalutara and Matara and Galle, those regions, the circles are much smaller. In fact, the associations are very striking. There was a very clear association of alpha-thalassemia and beta-thalassemia with malaria. Not only with malaria, hemoglobinopathies are associated with rainfall. Alpha-thalassemia, beta-thalassemia, and hemoglobin E in this country has a strong association with rainfall, regional rainfall data. Regions with high rainfall have less thalassemia. Regions with a high rainfall has low incidence of thalassemia. But this, I am sure, is acting through malaria because after all, less rainfall means stagnant pools of water. High rainfall means flowing water. Unlike in Papua New Guinea, altitude did not play an important role in Sri Lanka, nor did temperature. What about ethnicities? There was no association of ethnicities. There were no significant difference between the Sinhalese and the Tamils between alpha-thalassemia, beta-thalassemia, or hemoglobin E. However, the Moor community had a slightly higher prevalence of the mild alpha 3.7 deletion. Now, does consanguinity play a role in the propagation of thalassemia in this country? Consanguinity is marriage between relatives. In clinical terms, consanguinity is marriage between second cousins or closer. This map gives you the globe. This is a global map of consanguinity done by Alan Bittles in 2009, and Sri Lanka is supposed to have a consanguinity rate of 30%. This, however, is based on a single study done by Reed in 1970, where he had sampled Candians of the Govigama caste, a very small population indeed. There's very, very little data from Sri Lanka. So we decided to do our own survey, where parallel to the hemoglobinopathy survey, we did a marriage register survey for 6 months in all 25 districts. So the marriage registrars in this country, we selected the 3 busiest marriage registrars from each district. So they collected information for 6 months of all the registrants in their sector. Amongst many other information, they collected information of first and second cousin marriages. The overall consanguinity rate was 7%, but there was a remarkable variation between the regions, 2 to 21%. Very interesting data indeed. Of 4,648 marriages screened, the most highest consanguinity was in the Tamils with 17%, whereas in Sinhalese, consanguinity was 2%, so was in the Moor community. Based on this, and also our own observations over the last 25 years working in this field, we do not feel that consanguinity plays an important role in the propagation of thalassemia in Sri Lanka, quite in contrast to our regional allies. Let me return to a question which I posed early on in the lecture. Is sickle cell found in this country? Is it African or Arab Indian? Over the last few years, we have done 3 studies on sickle. We have mapped the distribution of sickle in the country. We've done a caseload estimate of sickle. And very recently, there's an ongoing study of genotype-phenotype association of sickle cell disease in this country. Micromapping sickle in this country, we were surprised to see that sickle is completely different to the other hemoglobinopathies. And as you can see, unlike the other hemoglobinopathies, sickle is coastally distributed. Just like Dr. Nagesh Nagaratnam said, sickle is found, the highest density is in Hambantota, but it's found in Batticaloa, Trincomalee, Mullaitivu, Mena, but of course in Kurunegala. Kurunegala seems to have everything. The total number of patients with sickle in the country is about 50. And after having realized that this is sickle patients are about 50, we have started an ongoing phenotype-genotype association study. Right now, we have completed the assessment of 49 patients. 43 of them have sickle beta thalassemia, but importantly, there are 6 patients with homozygous sickle cell anemia. The majority are Sinhalese. A third of all patients' ancestral origin is in the Hambantota district. Coming to the key question, the genetic origin, 45 out of the 49 haplotype analysis showed they have the Arab Indian haplotype. It's not African in the majority, but importantly, in 4, it's African. 3 Benin, 1 Bantu. It's easy to say it's Arab Indian, we have got the answer, but it's not that simple. Is it Arab or is it Indian? If you look at India, sickle is all over the place. It's found in the tribals, as I mentioned. It's found in the middle parts of India. It's found in Assam. It's found in Gujarat. So who gave sickle to us? This is very, very difficult to differentiate. We are trying to decipher this right now. So finally, ladies and gentlemen, we have also identified uniquely Sri Lankan mutations. I already mentioned the identification of 3 beta thalassemia mutations. But the more interesting finding was the detection of a severe alpha-0 deletion. Now, a normal human being is supposed to have 4 alpha genes. Loss of 1 alpha gene is called alpha plus thalassemia. This is exceedingly common in this country. That's what I mentioned in the first few maps. We have a lot of this in this country. This is very, very mild. This type of thalassemia, where you lose 2 genes in the same chromosome, is referred to as alpha-0 thalassemia. This is exceedingly rare in this country, but very common in Southeast Asia. Because we do not have a lot of this, we do not have hydroxyfetalis, and we do not have HBH disease in this country. Despite the rarity, so in the world, HBH disease and hydrox is found in Southeast Asians and is not found in Sri Lanka. Even though it's rare, Dr. Sashikala Suresh, a hematologist who was working in Kurunegala, identified a few patients who had severe hypochromic microcytic anemia, who did not have beta thalassemia, who did not respond to iron. Importantly, some of them did not have HBH inclusions, which you would expect to find in severe alpha thalassemia. All of them, interestingly, are Moors, and they are unrelated. And then we stepped in and did the genetic assessment, and we found a deletion which has never been described anywhere else in the world. We have named it the Sri Lankan alpha thalassemia deletion. We published this as well. So to sum things up, ladies and gentlemen, having worked in this field now for maybe 25 years, we have a rough idea about the type of hemoglobinopathies we have in this country. The commonest hemoglobinopathy in Sri Lanka is alpha thalassemia, but it's a very mild type of alpha thalassemia. The commonest clinically significant thalassemia is beta thalassemia. The commonest structural variant in the country is hemoglobin E. Sickle is uncommon, but it is far more common than was initially expected to be. When you try to answer the question, where did these mutations come from, it's very clear that founder effect and migration has played a role for hemoglobin E, hemoglobin S, for beta thalassemia, as well as for alpha thalassemia. But when you try to answer the question, why are some mutations more common in some regions? Why is mutations more common in Kurunegala and not in Gaul? The answer is clearly natural selection, and the factor is malaria. And we've also shown that mutations do arise spontaneously in Sri Lanka, the best example being the severe alpha-0 deletion. None of this work is my own. Must acknowledge the work of my mentor, Professor Sir David Weatherall, and the original research team, including Nancy Olivieri and Dr. Shanti Mali De Silva. And this is the picture from way back in 1996, way before Kurunegala had its thalassemia unit. I managed to set up my own unit in Kurunegala, Ragama, and this is the new unit. And I'm really fortunate to be able to work with a young group of very energetic doctors, scientists, and these people are the reason why I'm able to present this work today. This group has developed the work on sickle, alpha-thalassemia, and thalassemia intermedia. They do all the hard work, and I seem to be getting all the credit for this. On a rather sentimental note, 35 years ago, seated in this same lecture theater, completely lost, having any guidance, not having any sense of direction. And I should thank my mentors from Trinity, but most of all to my teachers from the best medical school of all in Sri Lanka, teachers from Peradeniya. I must end this lecture on a more somber note though. Professor Sir David John Weatherall, my mentor and is my personal hero. He is behind almost all the successes I've had in my personal life as well as professional life, and he without doubt has contributed to the cause of thalassemia in Sri Lanka more than anyone has ever had. Sadly, he passed away just 4 days ago. I'd like to dedicate this to his sweet memory. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for taking us through our journey of unraveling the mystery of hemoglobinopathies in Sri Lanka.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have now concluded the official inauguration ceremony of the 14th International Medical Congress of PeMSAA.
You will now be entertained by our own medical students from Faculty of Medicine, Peradeniya. There will be some changes in stage setup. Please bear with us.
ක්‍රිස්තු වර්ෂ 1931 දී ගම්පහ බැන්ඩියමුල්ල ප්‍රදේශයේ උපන් කලාකීර්ති හෙන්රි ජයසේනයන් දක්ෂ නළුවෙකු සහ නාට්‍යකරුවෙකු බව අතීතය අපට සාක්ෂි දරයි. ගම්පෙරළියේ පියාගේ චරිතයත් දහසක් සිතුවිලිහි ලලිත්ගේ චරිතයත් ඒ දරුවෝ ටෙලිනාටයේ අප කවුරුත් ආදරයෙන් බැලඳගත් සුදුසියාගේ චරිතයත් ඒ අතුරින් අපට කිසිදා අමතක වන්නේ නැත. ඔහු නිෂ්පාදනය කරන ලද වේදිකා නාට්‍ය අතරින් වර්ෂ 1967 දී හුණුවටේ කතාවත්, වර්ෂ 1973 දී මකරා නාට්‍යයත් මින් විශේෂ තැනක් ගනී. හුණුවටේ කතාවේ එන සත්‍ය මව සහ ව්‍යාජ මවට දරුවා ලබා දීමේදී වෙනසුරු අසඩයක් දරුවා දෙකඩ කිරීමට තීරණය කරන අතර දරුවාට සැබෑවටම ආදරය කළ මව එසේ නොකරන ලෙස ඔහුගෙන් අයද සිටියාය. අප මව්බිම දෙකඩ කිරීමට සැරසෙන්නේ මව්බිමට ආදරය කරන අය නොවන බවට අපට ඉඳුරාම කිව හැකිය. ක්‍රිස්තු වර්ෂ 1914 දී උපත ලද මහාචාර්ය එදිරිවීර සරච්චන්ද්‍රයන් ප්‍රතිභාපූර්ණ නාට්‍ය රචකයෙකු, නවකථාකරුවෙකු, කවියෙකු මෙන්ම සාහිත්‍ය විචාරකයෙකුද විය. අප පේරාදෙණිය විශ්වවිද්‍යාලයේ ජ්‍යෙෂ්ඨ කතිකාචාර්යවරයෙකු ලෙස සේවය කළ එතුමන් වර්ෂ 1956 දී මනමේ නාට්‍යත්, වර්ෂ 1961 දී සිංහබහු නාට්‍යත්, නාඩගම් ශෛලිය සහ ජන නාට්‍ය කලාව ඇසුරු කරමින් නිෂ්පාදනය කළේය. මනමේ නාට්‍යයේ එන වැදි රජුට කඩුවදී රජ කුමරට කොටුවදීම වර්තමානයේදීද සිදු වී ඇති බවක් පෙනේ. බොහෝ දෙනා තැන් තැන්වල මොනවා කීවත් සිංහයාට බය බව මහාචාර්ය සරච්චන්ද්‍රයන් අපට මතක් කර දීමද ආශ්චර්යකි.
රංග භූමියේ පෙම්බැන්ද සිංහ සීවලී නුඹ මන්දලෙනින් පිට වෙලා ගියේ මං සිංහයාට බයයි නංගියේ මං සිංහයාට බයයි නංගියේ රජ සමගින් අවසඟ මනමේ කුමරිට රැවටුණ රජ සමගින් අවසඟ මනමේ කුමරිට රැවටුණ මනමේ කුමරා මමයි නංගියේ දනුදර උනාට ඉහත සන්දියේ දනුදර උනාට ඉහත සන්දියේ මං සිංහයාට බයයි නංගියේ මං සිංහයාට බයයි නංගියේ කඩුමට දැයි පෙමෙත වෙඬරු සදිසි උණු වෙන හිත් නිත උණු කඩු මොත දැයි ප්‍රේමෙට වෙඬරු සදිසි උණු වෙන සිත් නිත හිරය මෑත් කරන වංගියේ අසිපතගෙන නුඹ කොහි සැඟවුනිදෝ අසිපතගෙන නුඹ කොහි සැඟවුනිදෝ සිංහයාට බයයි නංගියේ මං සිංහයාට බයයි නංගියේ සිංහන්ද රංග භූමියේ පෙම්බැන්ද සිංහ සීබලී නුඹ මණ්ඩලෙනින් පිට වෙලා ගියේ මං සිංහයාට බයයි නංගියේ මං සිංහයාට බයයි නංගියේ මං සිංහයාට බයයි නංගියේ මං සිංහයාට බයයි නංගියේ
ක්‍රිස්තු වර්ෂ 1974 දී ලයනල් වෙන්ට් ඇකඩමියේ නාට්‍ය සහ චිත්‍රපට පිළිබඳ දැනුම් සම්භාරයක් ලබාගත් පරාක්‍රම නිර්යල්යන් නාට්‍ය සහ චිත්‍රපට කලාවට කළ මෙහෙය අපරිමිතයි. වර්ෂ 1989 දී සිරිමැදුර චිත්‍රපටයත් ඉන්පසුව සම්මානිත පාත්‍ර වූ සුදු ටෙලි නාට්‍යත් බල්ගේරියාවේ සහ බර්ලිනේදී චිත්‍රපට උළෙලවල් නියෝජනය කරමින් සම්මාන ලද කඩඉම ටෙලි නාට්‍යත් මීට කඩම නිදසුන් ලෙස ගෙනහැර දක්වන්නට පුළුවන්. ඔහුගේ මූලිකත්වයෙන් ජනකරලිය ජංගම නාට්‍ය ශාලාව අප නාට්‍ය කලාවේ වෙනසක්ද සිදු කරන ලදී. සෙක්කුව නාට්‍යයේ එන පැඟිරාගේ සහ කිරිපුස්සාගේ සටන අපගේ වර්තමාන පාර්ලිමේන්තුව තුළද දක්නට ලැබෙන බව කාටත් මේ වන විටත් පසක් වී ඇති කරුණකි.
Thank you very much for your wonderful performance. Now, the vote of thanks will be delivered by the Congress Secretary, Dr. Rajita Abesekar.
Chief guest today, Dr. George Michael van der Putten, guest of honor, Dr. Channaratna Tunga, Deputy Vice-Chancellor, Professor Parakrama Karunaratne, Dean, Faculty of Medicine, Professor Asri Abegunawardena, Congress Lecturer, Professor Anuja Premwardena, past presidents of PeMSAA, special invitees, teachers, colleagues, and my dear friends. It is my privilege to deliver the vote of thanks at this inaugural ceremony marking the 14th International Medical Congress of PeMSAA. We are halfway through a Congress week packed with workshops, lectures, seminars, and fellowship. Organizing all of this is no small task and is only possible with the contribution of a large group of individuals. It is not possible to thank everybody individually, and as I'm aware that I'm the only thing keeping you from dinner tonight, I hope you bear with me for a few more minutes to thank all those who have contributed with their time, skill, and passion for all things PeMSAA. This evening's inauguration ceremony marks the beginning of the academic program, and on behalf of the President PeMSAA and committee and the organizing committee, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to our chief guest this evening, Dr. George Michael van der Putten, our guest of honor, Dr. Channaratna Tunga, the Congress lecturer, Professor Anuja Premwardena, the Deputy Vice-Chancellor, Professor Parakrama Karunaratne, the Dean, Faculty of Medicine, Professor Asri Abegunawardena, the Deans of the other faculties, Senate members, past presidents, and all invitees for accepting our invitation and gracing this occasion with your presence. We are honored to have you all here. We have seen a very successful pre-Congress workshops conducted over the last 3 days, and these would not have been possible without 7 teams which were coordinated by Professor Vasanthi Pinto, Dr. Vasana Kiridena, Dr. Arinda Dharmapala, Professor Chandrika Jayasinghe, Dr. Hirali Suravira, Dr. Jeevani Udupilla, Professor Badra Hevavitarne, and Dr. Chaminda Kandauda, and their teams. On behalf of the Congress Committee, I would like to thank everyone for a superb effort and a job well done. We are very grateful to the chairpersons and all the resource persons of all these workshops, without whom these events would not have been possible. Thanks also goes to all the participants whose enthusiasm for this learning something new is what keeps these workshops alive. The inauguration ceremony was a success thanks to the team ably headed by Dr. Induna Nayakara. This evening proceedings was made more colorful by the dancers, singers, drummers, and other performers who provided this evening's entertainment and will continue to entertain you all at dinner as well. So thank you, my dear students, for sharing your talents with us this evening. Thank you also to Dr. Sarada Hemapriya for organizing the students for this variety entertainment. A special thanks goes to Professor Vasanthi Pinto and her team for the lovely decorations. And of course, thanks to our two compeers and the ushers this evening who did a wonderful job running the show. So tomorrow we will begin the academic congress. And I'd like to thank all the authors, resource persons who are sharing their work with us, as well as all the individual program coordinators, chairpersons, judges, and reviewers who agreed to share their time and experience with us conducting these events. My gratitude also goes out to the editorial committee members, Professor Ratnatunga, Dr. Veranja, Dr. Heshan, and Professor Rajapaksa, and all scientific committee members who took a lot of effort in formulating this academic program and for all their editorial work, which is actually the backbone of this whole program. A special thanks goes to Dr. Kalana and Dr. Vasala for coordinating the academic event, which I'm sure is going to be a great success. The whole event was made more colorful due to the exceptional contribution of our IT, media, and printing staff. I'd like to extend my special thanks to Mr. Gahan Liyanage, Femit Fonseca, Mr. Pavitra Ratnayaka, Mr. Mahendra Panditaratna, Mr. Takshan Piyasiri, Mrs. Lalita, Chaminda and Neptune Printers, and Sterling Silver for their support. They have been a wonderful team to work with. My sincere thanks is extended to the directors of Teaching Hospital Peradeniya, Kandy, and Sirimao Bandaranayaka hospitals for providing us with the auditorium and for the pre-congress workshops, as well as the hospital staff for their support during these events. Our thanks goes also to the Director General of the Agriculture Department and the Director of the PGRC and staff for providing us with the PGRC as the venue for our academic congress. I would like to thank Professor Neil Allis, Head TRC, Mr. Gamini Gunaseka, and all TRC staff for photography, video, and media coverage. Dr. Anura Rajapaksa, as always, has been a strength to PeMSAA and has very generously agreed to look after all aspects of IT and audio visuals throughout our conference. Thanks also goes to all the academic and non-academic staff of our Faculty of Medicine for all their help and support in organizing the Congress. I'd like to thank Professor Asiri Abhay Gunawardana, Dean Faculty of Medicine, and the Dean's Office staff, University Chief Engineer, Maintenance Unit, University Security, and the Cleaning Services for all their help. Our sister organization, the KSM, has always lent a great supporting hand, and we thank the President and the KSM and consultants and all doctors of Teaching Hospital Kandy for their support throughout this event. I'd like to acknowledge Mahavali Reach Hotel, the Grand Canyon Hotel, Williams & Sons for their assistance in hosting the Congress event. An event of this magnitude would not have been a reality without the generous financial assistance of our sponsors. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the doctors who coordinated the sponsorships, as well as our sponsors who have contributed immensely. Few new names need special mentioning. Doctors Dinesha, Asanka, Dilma, Sakuntala, and Dr. Anura Abe Sundara for stepping up at a very short notice to help us with a lot of jobs, which were to make this event a great success. Last but not least, I'd like to thank all the members of the Congress Committee, our Congress Chairperson, Dr. Sisira Ranraja, PeMSAA President, Professor Kumarasiri, Professor Kapila Gunawardana for all their hard work and guidance in making this event a success. Of course, I must thank my partner in crime, Dr. Manoji Patirage, PeMSAA Secretary, without whom I would not have survived the last few months, and who actually managed almost all of these aspects during the Congress. There are many others whose names I might have missed by accident, who devoted their time and effort to make this Congress a great success. Please accept my apologies for any omission, but know that you all are deeply appreciated. Finally, thank you all for coming this evening to celebrate PeMSAA and our alma mater. I hope you enjoy the rest of the night and look forward to seeing you at the academic programs over the next 2 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. So with that, we have now concluded the official inauguration ceremony of the 14th International Medical Congress of PeMSAA.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing while the procession leaves the hall. Thank you. You are all cordially invited to the reception and fellowship which we have organized for you at the beach area of the new anatomy block. We wish you a very pleasant evening and hope to see you all at tomorrow's scientific sessions.